Welcome to Stage Dive, a podcast where we go deep on the art of live performance to help artists perform better on stage. I am your host, Jack Dawkins. I am a rapper, poet, and storyteller out of Boulder, Colorado. My guest for the podcast today is Stacey Stardust, a magician who is living in Las Vegas. And she has had an incredible rise over the last 3 years as she has taught herself so much about magic and is getting ready to put on her first full-length magic show with her as the headliner. We talk about many things, including what it looks like to perform on the street, how someone could get involved in magic or a good place that you might want to start, and how to cultivate the confidence that allows you to give a great performance. So I'm sure you get this question all the time, but where does the name Stacey Stardust come from?
Oh, well, Stacey is my actual legal name. And
okay.
Yeah.
Good start.
So, easy.
Yeah.
And Stardust, I basically came up with that name about 2 years ago. I was looking for a new performer name because I didn't really necessarily have one. And I love Stardust for multiple reasons. I love it because the meaning, we're all Stardust, we're all connected, we're all sharing the same human experience. I think that's magic in itself and beautiful. And also it just kind of has this pixie, bubbly funness to it, or at least I kind of relate it that way. And so it just really reflects a lot of who I am spiritually and who I am as a performer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Was it the kind of thing that just kind of hit you like lightning when you were walking around one day, or was it something you sat down and like had a piece of paper and you're like, no, I'm gonna find this name?
It was more sit down with a piece of paper. I wrote out a bunch of potential names. It was like Starburst, Sparks. Had a couple different ones there, and I made a poll on my personal Facebook. Said, "Hey, what do you guys think of these names?" And Stardust just kind of shined above the rest.
I love that, and I love that you got your fans involved. That's amazing. And you're doing your own show now, right?
Yeah, so it's not just my show. It's a variety show, but I host it, I produce it, and I perform in it.
I would call that your show.
It's my show.
I love that you honor that it is larger than just you, but I would describe that as your show.
Right.
So like, because the context of this podcast is all about performance, I would love to sort of dig into like, what was the process, or what were the steps to go from like, I have an idea that I would like to do or produce my own show, and like how you actually got there, which I know is probably a lot of little questions baked in. But like, do you remember kind of where you were, what you were feeling when you first had the idea, like, I want to put on my own show?
Yeah, so at the time I was headlining a weekly show. It was a comedy show, so I was headlining with magic. And it was at this very, very ghetto nightclub. It was not very well marketed, which was kind of great for me because it was a good place to be bad, where people weren't actually seeing me yet as I was getting good. And so I was doing the show once a week, and I just kind of outgrew the venue. I started to get good and wanted people to see me, but not there. And I had some producers come see my show and some venue owners see my show. And they said, you're great. We would love to have you at our venue. And at the time, I didn't have a full 45-minute show. And I still was working on new material, trying to put together my full 45-minute show. And so I kind of thought, what if I had a venue where I could work on my show and build my acts one act at a time while I put together that show? And I thought of this concept of, what if I had other performers fill in the time, gave them the same opportunity for them to try out new acts and get good? Because we're in Las Vegas, Nevada. We have Cirque du Soleil. We have some of the biggest shows in the world and some of the greatest performers in the world. People come here to follow their dreams of being in the circus or being on stage. And there was no stage for performers to try out new acts, to get stage time, to get that flight time that we all need. And I decided, you know what, these venues want me, they want my show, but I'll give them a little bit of me, and I'll also share this opportunity with other performers and put together a show that way.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think one of the, like, not to get overly economic about it, but at some point you realize like venues want to be full. That's their whole thing, right? They want butts and seats. We as performers want time on stage. And
Mm-hmm.
so whenever you can find an intersection of like, I can do something that people want to see, the venue has seats that people can be in, amazing. We can make things happen. But I think there's a lot of room with how you accomplish that. And I love what you described. So is your intention eventually to break out and do your own 45-minute show? And this is sort of on the way?
So yeah, I'm already in the works. I basically have my full 45-minute show together now, and I have a couple of venues who are interested in it. So I've been debating. I think what I'm going to do to start off is keep the show I have now. Right now, it's just once a month. So I'll produce this show once a month, and then I'll have my full 45-minute solo show once a month, and kind of just do them both simultaneously and see what they become.
Yeah, cool. Um, I'm curious, like for a 45-minute show, how many total hours of material do you feel like you've developed that you've been able to carve down to 45 minutes?
Well, I mean, when I first started, I was doing a little bit more parlor. So before I got this weekly gig at this nightclub, I was street performing out here on Fremont Street. And so I basically took my stuff that I was doing out there and just played it a little bit bigger to do this headline show. And now the material that I'm doing is completely different because now I'm playing to a lot bigger stage, a lot bigger audience, so it's all different material. So I've basically had to get rid of that material and come up with all new material that fits the venue and the show that I'm looking for. So it's just been a lot of material in general, but for the specific show that I'm working now, it's just kind of been the same material that I've just been tightening and honing. And it's like, when do you pause to get the best laugh? And
Mm,
there's so many little things, like where do you add a little bit more music during the dramatic time to make the act a little bit tighter? And so there's just so many things I've been doing to fine tune those big stage pieces that I have. And it's now to a place to where I'm proud of it, and I want to share it, and I'm ready for my full show.
I love it. Can you talk through your process around like how you identify the moments in the show where you think there's opportunity to change or improve? And is it after every show you sit down and write it down, or it's just kind of a feel thing on stage of like, ooh, next time I think I want to try this? Like, what does the refinement process look like for you?
Yeah, so every single show that I do, I record, and usually a couple days after or the next day, I'll go back and I'll review that video. And if I'm lucky enough, I'll be able to get one of my friends who's also a performer or somebody in the community to sit down and watch it with me and just give me notes. And I always do that. Every time I perform, I always record, always watch it back, and then I give myself notes. And if I can, I get notes from other people, but also just you know, you the only way to really try things out or test things out or see what works is to try it out on stage and do things a little bit differently. And a lot of times there's just a lot of improv because the stuff that I do is audience participation, and it's this local show that is very intimate. So I'll just say different things to different people and see how it hits. And that's just the kind of style of performing that I like. And yeah, that's the only way to see what works is to try it out.
I mean, I imagine starting with performing on the street, you had to get pretty good at like, how do I get someone's attention? How do I build that rapport super quickly? Like, that must have been an amazing training ground.
Oh gosh, Fremont Street in Vegas. I put it this way, like, if you can make it as a street performer on Fremont Street in Vegas, you can make it anywhere. It's like, it's the roughest environment that you could possibly be in as an entertainer. You have these casinos with these big blasting speakers, you have live bands with stages, you have the most drunk people in the world. People go to Vegas to get wasted. And people go to Fremont Street to see the wild, the crazy, and the people who want to go there are people who love that kind of stuff. So I had to deal with a lot of, I'll just say, drunk bros walking up and down the street, and I would get a lot of things like, trying to get them to stop is the hardest part, because there's people handing out flyers, come see my show, come see this, come see that, and people begging for tips and begging for money. And so I'm out there like, hey, want to see some magic? And they're like, I just want to see your tits. And I'm like, cool. I'm so glad that I spent hours learning all of this amazing material. But yeah, people just trying to grab shit from you, people trying intentionally to mess you up, and having to watch all angles. And it was wild experience, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I almost gave up on magic and decided, you know what, magic's not for me because of dealing with Fremont Street. But then I traveled to another place that was not Vegas, and it changed my life. But yeah, it was brutal.
So I'm putting a pin in a bunch of things. I want to know where you went. I want to know when and like where in your life magic started to become a presence and something you were interested in. Like, I want to come back to that. But what I want to ask first is like two things. One, like, what was it like to decide to be on the street? Because I'm sure there were things you didn't necessarily expect, but you didn't go in blind. You didn't think it was like, this will be like a nice walk in the park. You knew it was going to be hard. So what made you decide, like, nope, I'm dragging my ass to Fremont Street and I'm going to do magic tricks for strangers? Like, talk to me about that, because I think, like, I'll be your hype man. That's not something a lot of people would want to do voluntarily. So I'm curious, like, where did you find the spark of either courage or inspiration or whatever it was that allowed you to do that?
Yeah, well, magic is one of the only art forms that you need to perform for actual people to get good. Most art forms, you just go out there, you do your dance, you do your thing, you get your steps in, and it's the same every show. But when you're doing magic, you have to get out there and see what people are actually going to do. You can try to like get a card randomizer to try to do it that way, but you don't know where people are going to grab, what people are going to say, where people are going to look. There's so much misdirection and eye contact and all of that. So I knew I had to practice in front of live people. And I actually had a friend who would go out to Fremont Street, and his name's Will Bradshaw. And so he would go out to Fremont Street, and he used to do it full time. So he made a living off of Fremont Street. So I had a little bit of a mentor in there. And the first couple of times that I went out there, we kind of shared a spot together, and he would perform and then I would perform, and we kind of did it that way. But before I even kind of reached out to him, I just went out there during the pandemic, which there was nobody on Fremont Street. There was very few people. And, a lot of people don't want to be touched. They don't want to touch foreign objects or talk to strangers. But the few people that were out on Fremont Street, it was an incredible experience, because here I am wanting to share magic with them. And the magic that I was doing at the time was very meaningful. I had them, take a card and think of a wish, something that they really wanted or needed. And they ended with this like beautiful star in their hand, which was a piece of gift magic. And I gave them hope, and some people gave me hugs, some people cried. They really wanted and needed to hold on to hopes and dreams. And so through magic, I'm like getting emotional, I was able to share that. And so it was just such a cool experience. And I'm like, okay, something is telling me I need to be doing this. And but then everybody came back and was drunk, and it was wild again. So but yeah, I just really knew that I needed to get in front of live people, and I'd rather go in front of random strangers than F up magic in front of my friends or like people that I know. Also, doing magic for people that you know is a totally different experience because they know
Sure.
you're not a wizard. They know you don't have these powers. They know who you are. And so it's like, no, I just want to go out there to be strangers, be like, hey, I'm Stacey Stardust. I'm going to show you some real magic. This shit's legit. Let's go. And, you know, they're like, whoa, what is this experience? Who is this person? They don't have this like preconception of, oh, yeah, that's my friend that, you know, I've known for years or whatever.
That's so interesting. Like, I think a necessary piece or actually like a difficult lesson I think you learn as an artist, and this is true for everyone. Your friends and family can't be as supportive as people who don't know you because they have so many stories about who you are and who you're not and what you can and what you can't do. And from a place of love, it shapes the way that they see you.
Mm-hmm.
And the you who like they had sleepovers with or have been drunk with or done these things, like you can't be a superstar. You can't be fucking magic. You can't do these things. And so you are forced to go and find opportunities to be the person you really want to be without the stories attached. And like, I think it's such a cruel lesson. So I make music. Like, my friends and family support the music. They enjoy it, but it's not the same because they're like, yeah, but you're you. And I'm like, I know. I'm trying. Like, I'm trying to step into this vision that I have. What are some of the things that you have learned that are great for getting people to stop? Because I agree, when it comes to busking or performing outside, getting people to actually stop and engage with you is the hardest part.
Yeah, the biggest things are, you know, throwing objects or floating objects, just anything that's up in the air, that's highly visual, people go towards. So if you're like floating a playing card or you're like throwing a stick or you're or loud noises too. If you're just like tapping something really loud or like going, ha, ha, and just like making some crazy noises and movement. People don't like when you try to bring them in. They're like, nope. It's like they absolutely want nothing to do with it. You have to pretend like you don't care. So you have to be super interested in what you're doing. Like, oh wow, this is so cool. And then they're like, ooh, I'm interested. Why are they so into that thing they're doing? And then you start to get this intrigue, and then you can kind of sort of like maybe accidentally throw something towards them, or you know, there's this like weird psychology of not grabbing their attention but like piquing their curiosity and then finding a way to get them in. It's weird.
No, but you make such a good point. People don't want to be pulled in. People don't want to be grabbed. People don't want to be shown or convinced. Like, if you demonstrate the enthusiasm, if you show how much fun you're having with whatever it is that you're doing, people want to be a part of it, but they can't ask. And so
Right.
it's how do you invite them without inviting them? I love that.
And once you get the first person to stop, you know, it's a crowd mentality. People are like, oh, somebody's already interested. It's probably cool. So it's so wild. Once you get like one or two people, the rest will just flock. But getting those first couple of people is extremely difficult, especially on Fremont Street.
I can imagine. Such a good training ground. So I love that you were starting to feel some emotion around like what it feels like to sort of be doing what you were made to be doing and seeing the effect it can have on people. So let's way rewind. Like, you and magic. Tell me about how you started dating. Like, where did that relationship even begin?
Well, I've been around magic for years because I've dated people in the community, but I never really got into it myself until about 3 years ago, or maybe 3.5 years ago. I broke my leg roller skating, and I had just turned 30. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with my life, you know? And I'm very high energy, fidgety. I love all circus arts. You know, I was big into hula hooping at the time, and bunch of other things. And basically, I just reached out to one of my friends who is a magician and said, "Hey, my leg's broke. I'm stuck at home for a couple months, can't drive. Can you come over and teach me some magic tricks?" And so my friend came over, taught me a couple of card tricks. I'm like, "Oh, this is cool." She gave me something to fidget with, something to play with, something to occupy my time. And then I would practice for my roommates. And then I eventually started going out to Fremont Street and performing. But it just, I don't know, there's something about it that's so unique and fun. Just getting people to feel like kids again and giving them an experience that we as adults don't get to experience a lot anymore, which is wonder and miracles, magic. It's just such a unique niche. Seeing people light up and smile and just have that playful energy again, and I got hooked.
It's amazing. What were you doing before?
Well, for income, before I went full time as a magician, I would dress up as a Vegas showgirl and walk up and down the strip and take pictures with tourists. So I was still kind of doing the entrepreneurial thing, and I had
Sure.
made all my costumes myself, and I trained my friends to sell to get as much money as possible doing it, and it's a freaking hustle. Um,
I'm sure.
but yeah, basically, I was just kind of taking little gigs here and there, and um, yeah, I didn't really have a steady anything.
No, which is great. So I also came to art relatively late. I'll turn 36 in 6 days. And I only started making music 2.5 or 3 years ago. And in some ways, like I struggle between feeling very behind because I see people make music who are like 20 and I'm like, oh, 16 years, that's so much time.
Yeah,
But like I also so benefit from the previous jobs I had and the previous businesses I tried to start and the relationships I've been in and like how much I know myself as a human being, which means when I create art, it's coming from a place of, I don't want to say more authenticity, but like this is well carved. Like I know who I am and I know who I'm not in a
right.
way that's very different than when I was 22. And it's like, I don't think there's a right or wrong time to start doing anything. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of taking advantage of what you have available to you at whatever age you have. So when you're 20, that's something. When you're 30, that's something. And when you're 40, 50, and 60, it's a whole other category. But they're all on the table. They're all possible.
Yeah, I love that you said that because it's so true. Just as a society, we're told or we're molded that we're supposed to do certain things by certain ages, and that's just because they want to control us. Like honestly, when I first started in magic, I hear all these stories of, oh yeah, I got into magic. My uncle was doing magic when I was a kid, and I started when I was 5, and I hear all those stories like, yeah, when I was 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a magician, and I'm just like, dang, yeah, nope, 30.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You seem like you have a personality that lends itself toward performance. So, like, when it comes to performance, I think it's interesting. There's sort of like two avenues you can go down. One is people who are where you were 3 years ago and they have a curiosity and they're like, how do you start? How do you even begin to think about that sort of thing? So, I have a whole series of questions around like, if you had to recommend one magic trick that someone could learn that you think is like a good skill to have and is fun to perform for other people, like, where would you advise people to start if they just wanted to try?
Yeah, I think card tricks in general are a great place to start. There's a million card tricks. YouTube has a bunch of easy tutorials for learning stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna teach a card trick right now, but
No.
yeah, there's a lot of, I would say, beginner card tricks is where I would start. That's where I started, and I think cards is a classic, and there's a lot you can learn just as a beginner with cards.
And how long, like, and I'm sure there's levels, right? There's probably like a certain amount of time to be able to just do it like at a very basic level. Then there's an amount of time to do it passably, and then there's an amount of time of like I don't mastery. I don't know if that's quite the right term, but like how long ish does it take you, or did it take you when you started to kind of get a trick from like, I just started learning it today and like now it's part of my routine and I don't even think about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's tricks that, I mean, with magic, there's so many different moves and sleights and things that, you have to have your hands in certain positions that just take, it's muscle memory and motor movement and all of that. So there's things that I'll just fidget with. I'll bring a deck of cards with me wherever I go, and I'll just like under the table at the restaurant, just work on that one little sleight or that one little move. And maybe I'll do that for like 6 months and be like, okay, now I kind of have it or whatever. But there's other tricks that I purchase and I'll perform that same day. So there's every level of magic, just depending on what you want to do. And that's the beauty of it is um, there's magic at all levels, and there's all sorts of crazy things you can do. There's stuff you can buy that's just gimmicked and it looks real, and you just take it and it's self-working, and it's all in your delivery, how you present it and how your interaction with your spectators. Um, so yeah, any and everything.
Yeah.
But it took about a year. Well, let's see. Before I started learning magic about 3.5 years ago, and after about 2 years, well, I'd say I went really hardcore with street performing for a year, and then I was ready to start performing full time, doing close up.
That's awesome. That's so great. Yeah, I feel like it's always longer than people want, but not as long as people think.
Well, it's just how many hours you spend into it. Like in 1 year, it's like how many hours within that year have you dedicated to learning this craft? So you
Right.
can learn something at whatever rate you want. And it's all about how much passion and you have towards it. If you love something, like if you love magic, you're going to wake up in the morning, grab a deck of cards, and immediately start playing while you're drinking your coffee.
Yeah.
So if you're passionate about anything, you can kickstart, or not kickstart, but just really expedite the process of how quickly you learn or get good at something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's hours of practice, absolutely, and it's quality of practice, right? I think like I say this lovingly. I think a lot of people rehearse in the way that is comfortable and that they are good at, which means they're just reinforcing that they're good at something.
Hmm.
They don't always work on a weakness or push into the edge of like what would really take my show from X to Y is the ability to do this, and I'm spending a little time on that and most of the time on the stuff I already know how to do. And it's because it sucks to suck. It's
Yeah,
not fun to practice things that you suck at, but that's where so much growth is.
absolutely. And I think that's one of my strong points is that I have very little ego. And so I love criticism. I'm like, please give me notes, please. But people with big
Mm,
egos are like, oh, that's not true. Oh, no, I don't agree. I think I'm doing it fine. And it's just like,
mm,
no, you have to be open to receiving. I take everything with a grain of salt because I still want to have my own style. And I don't think everybody is the greatest or has the best opinion, but at the same time, everybody has an opinion that maybe somebody else might have. And so I love when people give me criticism and feedback. It's so helpful, and that's the only way to really grow.
I don't. I hope this isn't an odd question. It might be. Like, how do you balance between like, yes, criticism and feedback are such an important part of art, and I think part of being an artist is learning how to receive it and not maybe not even take all of it at face value, but just to hear like, okay, you didn't like this part, you thought that could be different. I hear you. What do I now choose to do as a performer to either address that, not address that, evolve the act, not evolve the act? Like, that's a whole dynamic. But I think with magic in particular, so much of what you do is about creating the suspension of belief, right? It's like it's letting people fall into this place where they believe you are magic. So how do you balance between not wanting to betray that notion of being magic with being able to ask for feedback?
Well, the people that I ask for feedback are usually, people who have been in the magic field for
Mm,
years, or people who create magic. And so, but it's also great to get feedback from people who aren't magicians, because they see it from a whole different perspective. And it's very interesting getting their feedback as well. Um, but I don't think that I really need to balance anything with feedback. It's just something that I just take with a grain of salt. And the people that I specifically like to ask for feedback, well, I like everybody's feedback. Yeah, I don't know. I love growing and improving, and I want to know everybody's opinion so that I can make my own based on what I like and what people say. And yeah, always love growing.
what was one of the best pieces of feedback you ever got?
Hmm. I mean, it's different. Like when I first started performing, I had never been on stage before. Obviously, I first started performing, but there's things that you don't notice. That, like, for
Mm,
example, one thing that I was doing was that I was pacing back and forth on the stage, and I didn't realize it, and it was just a nervous thing. They're like, talk, hold a strong stance, say what you're gonna say. If you want to move to the other side, do it with purpose. Walk to the other side, then hold that stance, then talk. Don't pace back and forth. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was pacing back and forth. So there's these like
yeah.
little nervous things that maybe we do on stage that we don't notice until somebody points it out, and you're like, oh yeah, I am doing that. Okay, cool. But there's so many little things to tweak. Feedback that I've gotten recently was that I cuss too much, and that it kind of brings down my classiness. It brings down people's perception of me. I'm like, okay, that's good feedback. I probably do cuss more than I should. And but yeah, I'm just always getting certain little feedback. There's nothing specific, and when it comes to magic, there's so much to it, like, oh, you should have looked this way, or oh, you should have put this prop over here instead of over here because it was kind of covering your view or being cumbersome. And so there's no one thing. There's just so many little notes that you can always tweak to make things tighter and tighter.
Yeah. Yeah. That resonates. I totally understand that. I mean, it sounds like you've had access to a number of different kind of mentors and people within the world of magic that have been supportive. Like, how would you describe the magic community as someone who knows like nothing
I
about the
mean,
community of professional magic?
yeah, it's a huge community. So you've got everything. You've got your egotistical people, and obviously it's male dominated. So you've got the males who are like not very supportive, who are just like probably jealous that I'm a young pretty girl, and they're not really wanting to give feedback, or just wanting me to be succeeding. And then we've got, people who are some of the best magicians in the world, who just genuinely want to see great magic out there, especially from females, because our expectations are lower because there's less of us. So people have less of a standard for a great female magician. And so there's been so many people in the community who are just like, I want to help you. I want to see you succeed. I think it's amazing that you're a female in magic. And, any way I can help and be supportive, please let me know, which is more of what I've gotten. And the amount of support and love that I've gotten from the community is absolutely beautiful. And I'm so grateful.
Hmm, that's awesome. Is it fair to say that the community is fairly male dominated?
Oh gosh, yes. My first magic convention I ever went to, there was one other female.
How big was the convention?
It was huge. It's one of the biggest conventions in magic. But there's definitely a lot more females than there used to be. In these last couple of years alone, there's been a huge increase in females in the magic industry, which is really fun and cool to see.
Do you have a sense of what has inspired that shift? I mean, like, celebrate it 100%. It doesn't really matter why. I'm curious if you have a sense of why that shift is happening.
Hmm. I think just as a society, we're just kind of getting away from certain gender roles and just being more open to having different genders and different roles, I guess. So I think it's because of that. But yeah, that is a great question. Also, certain things in the magic community, like certain TV shows or certain venues that have magician as performers, are more incentivized to have females because of these movements. And so I don't know if that's making females want to go towards it more, but there's definitely more demand for female magicians.
That's interesting. And I'm curious, do you perceive how do you perceive that your show would be different being led as a woman versus having a show that is traditionally led by a man? And maybe like the answer may be that there's no difference, but I'm just curious if you feel like that having a feminine energy on the stage for a magic show creates a different kind of experience than having a masculine one.
Hmm. Oh, good. Yeah, I don't know if the energy is different. I mean, I have my own specific energy for me as a person, which is
Totally.
pretty wild. Like my show or my personality is very just risque and wild and off the cuff and fun and a little bit kinky, a little bit me. I don't know.
No, which is beautiful. Again, I think I think with any performance, the more authentically you it is, the better. Um, and I don't want to get lost in the sauce. It's already happening. But and you try to think about what makes a magic show great. That sense of suspension, that sense of intrigue, that ability to relate with the magician. Is that different for a man or a woman? Like when I think about shows that I've seen, the mystique of the male magician is they're kind of weird. Like David Blaine's affect is odd. He does not seem like a warm person. He does not seem like someone that you would go grab a beer with. He kind of has this oddball mystique about him. And so I'm curious. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, so I don't think it's different from male to
Curious.
female. I think it's just different from performer to performer.
Human to human.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Make some noise! Welcome to Meow. I'm gonna need y'all to make the loudest, most welcoming scream that you can. And welcome my boy Jack Dawkins to the stage! Yo, happy Saturday evening. How are you? I have the pleasure, the honor of setting this off. Thank you for being here, for your time, for your attention, for spending your hard-earned money to come spend time with us. That is a blessing, so thank you. Rappers need water.
For you, before your show, do you have any rituals or kind of warm ups or things that you do to kind of get yourself ready to go on stage?
I don't. I mean, before I leave my house, before I show up to the venue, I'm always doing a full dress rehearsal of the show, of all the acts that I'm doing. So I always just make sure everything runs smoothly and that I'm wearing the exact costume that I'm going to be wearing when I'm performing it, that I have the exact music playing, and I run it as if I'm actually doing the full show. I think that's really, really important. Especially with magic, your costume matters because if you're putting things in certain spots or whatever, it can make a huge difference on how things are going to go. But once I'm at the show, because it's not just my show, I don't just show up and perform. So I have to basically read through everybody's intros and memorize them and put them in order. And, it's like, okay, I'm going to read this intro for this person after I do this magic act. So I need to kind of be ready for that. And so I have a lot to think about at once. And yeah, it's just, I don't really think. I'm just like in a mode. It's hard to describe. Yeah, I don't even think about performing. I just I think if I were to actually think about what I'm about to say and what I'm going to do, I would just kind of get in my head and overthink and maybe stress myself out. So I just try to lay back, be super casual, have fun with the other performers, get their mojo up, and just kind of go with the flow.
And is that how you've always been, just like in your life in general?
Mm. Well, I'm very new to performing in general. Like, I don't have a background in performing. I was never performing, when I was younger or whatever. So I'm just kind of going into this with maybe a different mindset than most entertainers. But I like to think that I've always been kind of go with the flow. That's how I am off stage. When things go wrong, I'm just like, all right, that's life. Let's deal with it. I feel like nothing phases me anymore. It's kind of wild. I'm not a robot, but I'm just a happy person, happy go lucky.
Yeah. I mean, like all things, I'm sure it's multivariate, right? Like you certainly seem like you have a generally positive, happy disposition. You spent a year on the street in Vegas getting yelled at, trying a whole bunch of crazy shit, right? Like at some point, not that you get numb to it, but like it doesn't affect you in the same
Yes.
way that it probably did the first time. So you get a thicker skin, is how you could describe it.
Yeah, so let me just, sorry, I want to interrupt real quick.
Nope.
So
Yeah.
like, for example, yesterday, day before the show, the evening before the show, I had five entertainers that were supposed to be in the show that were on the flyer cancel on me last minute. So it's just like, all right, I have to find 5 new entertainers. I have to get all their music in the right format to the DJ who said he wanted the music already and probably can't add it to his set list. So I have to find out how I can put it on my phone, how I can get the correct adapters, how I can, and then I have to remake the flyer. I have to re-advertise everything. I have like it, but it's just, I'm just so used to it now. I'm like, all right, here we go. And just like sending all these mass messages, making the flyer, it's just like, if I were to sit back and be like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? This many people performed and just sat and got stressed out about it. It's just not going to make anything better. I'm just always in go mode. It's like, okay, this is what happened. Solution, solution, solution. And I'm just so solution oriented that I really feel like nothing can faze me in my life.
I mean, there's a level of self-trust there that I think is super unique. Because like your point is so accurate, which is like most of the time worrying or being upset about things solves less than nothing. Like if anything, it just drains your energy further and doesn't solve the problem. So like being action oriented, particularly when you're on a tight time frame, makes a ton of sense. The way you framed it, which I love, which is that like if I did think about what I was going to say, or if I did try to overplan it, I would spend so much energy thinking about it and planning it that I probably wouldn't actually deliver the same performance. I think that's so true. And it's one of the most elusive parts about being a great performer is when you trust your instinct for how to perform versus trying to map out what it should look like. I think that it's super rare and it's super interesting that you found that. Not like quickly is the wrong word because it makes it sound like you haven't spent much time, but you've spent thousands of hours and you put yourself in the difficult positions and you've reviewed your work, which is another thing people don't do. So you have, but like, ooh, that's such a special quality.
Yeah.
What did you learn, if anything, from spending time around a bunch of comedians while you were at this first club? How did that inform your show or your magic?
I mean, there's just a lot of bad performers out there. And I mean, it's great to watch performances in general, just because every time you watch a show or watch something, there's always something to learn from it. Either something they did great or something that you do not want to repeat. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was crazy because they didn't market the show well at all, and a lot of the stuff that I do is audience participation. So it was me just having all the comedians come up one at a time and do magic with me on the stage. um, but yeah, I don't know. It was cool. It was fun.
That makes sense. Um, have you found any super useful techniques for marketing your shows now? Because I know that's another big thing that a lot of performers struggle with.
Oh, marketing is one of my strong points. You can have an amazing show. You can be an amazing performer. But if you don't know how to sell and you don't know how to market yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. So marketing for me is that's what I spend most of the hours doing, honestly. I spend probably more hours or just as many hours marketing as I do rehearsing. But I don't spend money on marketing. So that's also a huge thing. For me, it's networking. It's every time you're out there talking about your show and going out there in the community and supporting other people's events and talking about your event with them and just being really involved in the community and networking. And there's Facebook event pages. That's huge. And every day, a week before the show, promoting it on all social media. Like, I wish I had somebody to manage all of my social media pages because it's me. Luckily, they have a scheduling feature on Instagram now, which is a godsend. But, there's certain things to the algorithm to push your post. And when you're marketing, Facebook and Instagram notices if there's a lot of words in your photo, and they'll show it to less people because they know that you're marketing and they don't want you to market for free. So you have to come up with these creative and fun posts that don't look like you're marketing, and you have to post every single day so that the algorithm's happy and people see your show. So it's a full-time job. It's like, okay, I have to make 2 posts a day every single day for a week, and I have to make them engaging. And then once you make the post, when people comment on it, you have to engage back. So you have to be like, oh, awesome. Yeah, he's so great. I hope you can make it to the show. And just like, wow, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. I'm really curious, in Vegas, what is the split between locals and tourists for the shows that you do?
For me, it's all locals. The venue that I'm at is in downtown Vegas, so it's not on the Strip. It's not in a big casino. It's in the Arts District, which is where we have First Friday. It's where all the local artists hang out, go bar hopping. It's the only place in Vegas that has actual culture and community. So, my show tickets are only $15, and I'm not competing with any of these other big shows. It's basically a community show for the community by the community. And so that's my big market. So I'm not trying to compete with Chris Angel or David Copperfield. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you harbor any ambition to have a show that big one day?
Well, yes and no. It's definitely not my dream to have a show on the Strip in a casino, which is the same show every night.
Right.
But basically, what I want to do is travel. That's what I'm doing right now, or what I'm putting together right now is I want to go on tour. I want to bring my magic to other venues and not just be in Vegas. Vegas is great, and I love my local Vegas show, but I don't see myself just being a Vegas star. I want to go everywhere and travel the world and do what I love.
That's awesome. You just reminded me, you said there was a point in time when you were thinking about leaving magic and then you traveled somewhere. Where was that place? And tell me that story, please.
Yeah, so I went to Seattle, Washington. And this is in the summertime. So every other month out of the year, it's raining and gloomy. So in summer, everyone in Seattle is happy and vibrating and just loving life. And so I went to Seattle during that time. And one of my friends who I'd known from Vegas was out by the boardwalk, and he was performing magic on the street. And he was basically like, hey, would you like to do a set? And I had some magic on me. I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, why not? He let me use his headset, his table, his whole setup. And as soon as I started setting up my stuff, people were walking by and they're like, are you a magician? Are you about to do magic? Mom, can we see the magic show? Oh, this is so cool. I'm like, what is this energy? Oh my gosh. People are coming to me. I'm not having to call them. It was absolutely wild. It was just a completely different experience from Fremont. And, you know, people were so just loving and receptive. And it's people who had never seen magic before. So I'm the best magician they'd ever seen, and I'm showing them miracles, and they're just smiling and laughing and feeling like kids and just so grateful and receptive. And then, you know, after I did the street performing, we went out bar hopping, and I was just doing magic for people at the bar, and they're like, yo, you gotta check out this magician, she's wild. And the next thing you know, the whole bar is like surrounding us, like, let me buy you a drink. Oh my God, you're the coolest magician I've ever seen. This is wild. And I'm just like, okay. In Vegas, people are so jaded to magic. In Vegas, I say, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a magician. They're like, oh, cool. Yeah, I have a bunch of friends who are magicians. And that's all you get, you know? They're anywhere else in the world, you're like, I'm a magician. They're like, oh, cool. Let me see something. That's so awesome. But here, it humbles you.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I love that. This is a heady question. What do you think the role of magic is in society at large? Why does magic exist?
Yeah, it's kind of fun that adults pay people to fool them and do little tricks. It's such a fun and wild job, and it's such a unique experience. And I think it's because it gives us a sense of wonder. It gives us an experience that we do not get to experience that much anymore. Like when we're first born or when we're younger kids, little things seem like magic. And, you know, like when you're a toddler, an infant, you know, like this is magic. Or like turning on a light switch and seeing a light bulb turn on, like that's magic. And we just become jaded to everything and to life. And we all want that miracle to hold on to, or just to see crazy stuff that it just twists our reality and takes us out of the norm. It's just a fun experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can people find you online?
So you can find my show on Instagram and Facebook. It's Secret Circus Vegas. And I can be found on all the same platforms, Instagram, Facebook, all the things. It's Stacey Stardust, and my name is spelled with an E-Y, S-T-A-C-E-Y, Stardust.
Amazing. And we'll put all that in the show notes so people can find it. Any final thoughts you would like to leave these listeners with? Any encouraging words for aspiring magicians?
I mean, just aspiring artists and people who want to follow their dreams in general. My biggest message that I like to say is believe in your magic. We all have magic inside of us. And the reason that we don't follow our dreams is because we're holding on to our past trauma, things that people have told us or failures that we've had in the past. And you know, we all are capable of following our dreams and doing what we love. It's just those things we tell ourselves. And so believe in yourself. And if you believe something's real, it's real to you, and it's all in the power of the mind. So believe in yourself and believe in your dreams.
Oh, that's beautiful. Stacey, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Stage Dive. I'm having so much fun having all these conversations and meeting these wonderful, wonderful people. But I appreciate that this is also going out to you, the person who is listening. So my request, my ask, my desire, if you have any curiosities, questions, guest recommendations, suggestions for the podcast, please send us an email at stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. We read every single email that comes through. We will get back to you, and we really do want to hear what you love about the podcast, things that you think could improve, and how we can make this a better show for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.